What would you do if you walked into your home and saw the person you loved most standing over your mother with intent to harm her? For Matthew Grant, a self-made millionaire, that nightmare became his reality one quiet night. The truth he uncovered not only broke his heart but also showed him who real loyalty came from. Matthew grew up in a modest neighborhood outside Indianapolis. His mother, Ruth Grant, had raised him alone after his father left when he was just 5. She worked as a school bus driver in the mornings and a cashier in the evenings, holding the family together through sheer determination. Matthew never forgot the sound of her keys jangling when she returned home past midnight, exhausted but still smiling for him. That memory drove him to work harder than anyone else, and when his tech company finally succeeded, he promised his mother she would never worry again. He bought her a spacious home with wide porches and a view of open fields, her lifelong dream. But wealth doesn't only bring comfort, it also draws danger. 2 years earlier, Matthew had met a woman named Kayla. She was young, vibrant, and breathtakingly beautiful. Against the doubts of his closest friends, Matthew married her quickly. He believed she loved him, not his money. She made him feel alive, made him feel seen. He wanted so badly for it to be true that he silenced every warning bell. Ruth, however, was never convinced. A mother's instincts are rarely wrong. She saw the impatience in Kayla's eyes when Matthew spoke kindly to her. She noticed the way Kayla's voice sharpened when Matthew wasn't in the room. Though Ruth stayed quiet, she carried the unease in her heart. Because her health had started to falter, her knees stiff, her hands unsteady, Matthew urged his mother to accept some help at home. Ruth reluctantly agreed and eventually hired someone she trusted after careful searching. Her name was Loretta James. Loretta was a black woman in her late 40s with a warm smile and a spirit that carried resilience. Life had not been easy for her. She had raised her nephew after her sister passed, while juggling multiple jobs to stay afloat. She had once worked in a hospital kitchen but later moved into caregiving and housework. Despite her struggles, she carried herself with quiet dignity and strength. Ruth quickly grew close to her, not just as an employee but as a friend. Kayla, however, resented her from the start. "She's unnecessary," Kayla sneered one afternoon when Matthew wasn't home. "Your son already does too much for you. You don't need her hanging around, acting like she belongs here." Loretta didn't reply. But she noticed. She saw the jealousy in Kayla's eyes whenever Matthew brought his mother flowers, whenever he laughed with her first before turning to his wife. That jealousy was growing darker each day. One quiet evening, it erupted. Matthew had flown to San Francisco for a meeting. Kayla insisted he go alone, claiming she didn't want to hold him back. Ruth had gone to bed early, her body weary, while Loretta stayed behind to clean up the kitchen. Just as she was drying her hands, a faint, muffled sound from upstairs caught her attention, a sound that didn't belong. Heart pounding, she rushed up the staircase and pushed open Ruth's bedroom door. What she saw made her blood run cold. Kayla was leaning over Ruth's bed, pressing a pillow hard against the older woman's face. "Stop!" Loretta cried, running across the room. Kayla's head snapped up, her eyes wild. "Stay out of this," she hissed, shoving harder. Loretta didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, yanked the pillow away, and shoved Kayla back with all her strength. Ruth gasped, coughing violently, her chest heaving as she fought for breath. Loretta spread her arms wide, shielding her. "What are you doing?" Loretta demanded, her voice trembling with fury. Kayla's mask fell completely. Her face twisted, her voice venomous. "She's in the way. Daniel doesn't need her dragging him down. I'm supposed to be his whole life, not her." Loretta's heart raced, but her stance was unshakable. "If you want to touch her again, you'll have to go through me first." And at that exact moment, Matthew walked into the room. He had come home earlier than planned, holding flowers for his mother. But the sight before him froze him in place, his wife with rage in her eyes, Loretta shielding his mother, and Ruth gasping for breath. "Mom!" Matthew shouted, rushing forward. Ruth pointed a trembling finger toward Kayla. She tried to. Matthew didn't need her to finish. He saw the truth in Kayla's eyes, in Loretta's protective stance, in his mother's fear. His entire world collapsed in that instant. The woman he had trusted most had betrayed him, while the one society often overlooked, a maid, was the one who risked everything to protect his mother. What happened next would shock everyone. Matthew stood frozen, his pulse hammering in his ears. His mind fought to process what he had just walked into, his wife, the woman he had defended against every doubt, standing with fury in her eyes while Loretta shielded his gasping mother. "Matthew, it's not what you think." Kayla stammered, her voice cracking as she tried to switch back into charm. "She's lying, both of them are lying. I came in here to help your mother." She couldn't breathe, and Loretta overreacted. "Stop." Matthew's voice was low, but it cut through the room like a blade. Kayla froze. The look in his eyes wasn't one she had ever seen before. Matthew turned to Loretta, who still stood protectively in front of Ruth. "Tell me exactly what happened." Loretta didn't waver. Her chest was rising and falling from the struggle, but her eyes were steady. "I came upstairs when I heard your mother struggling." Kayla had a pillow pressed over her face. "She would have suffocated her if I hadn't pulled her off." Kayla's head snapped toward Loretta. "You're a liar. You're just jealous because I'm his wife and you're nothing but." "Don't you dare finish that sentence," Matthew cut in, his voice shaking with anger. He looked at his wife as though seeing her for the first time. "You almost killed my mother." Kayla's mask crumbled. "She's in the way, Matthew. Don't you see? She's always between us. You put her before me every single time. You'll never be free while she's still here." Matthew's jaw clenched. His chest ached, as though the floor beneath his feet had split open. He had ignored the warnings, silenced the doubts, and now the truth stood right in front of him, undeniable. Loretta knelt beside Ruth, gently holding her hand. "It's okay," she whispered softly. "You're safe now." Matthew dialed 911 with shaking hands. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights lit up the driveway. Police officers poured into the house. Kayla screamed and pleaded as they cuffed her wrists, but Matthew didn't move to stop them. His eyes stayed on his mother, frail and trembling in Loretta's arms. When the officers led Kayla out, she thrashed against their grip, shouting, "You'll regret this, Matthew. You'll regret choosing her over me." The door slammed shut behind them, and the silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Ruth's uneven breathing. Matthew sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. He felt like a fool, blinded by love, blind to the truth everyone else had seen. But when he looked up, his eyes landed on Loretta. She was still holding his mother's hand, her own hands trembling from the adrenaline, but her eyes steady, protective, and loyal. "Loretta," he said quietly, his voice raw, "you saved her life." She shook her head humbly. "I just did what anyone decent would have done." "No," Matthew said firmly. "Not everyone would have stood between a madwoman and someone else's mother. But you did. You risked yourself for her." Tears welled in Ruth's eyes. "I told you, Matthew, not everyone who smiles loves you. And not everyone who serves you is beneath you." She looked at Loretta with gratitude shining in her tired face. "She's family now." Over the next few weeks, the fallout was brutal. The story made headlines in local news: millionaire's wife arrested for attempted harm against mother-in-law. Business associates whispered. Friends called in disbelief. And Matthew had to face the humiliation of admitting how badly he had misjudged the woman he married. Kayla tried to fight the charges, hiring expensive lawyers and spinning stories of lies and exaggerations, but the evidence, Ruth's statement, Loretta's testimony, and even medical reports showing Ruth's distress that night, was undeniable. Eventually, Kayla's mask of innocence collapsed in court. For Matthew, though, the trial wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was at home, sitting with his mother and realizing how close he had come to losing her, because he had trusted the wrong person. Through it all, Loretta never wavered. She showed up every day, keeping Ruth's spirit steady, making sure the house felt safe again. Sometimes Matthew would catch her humming softly as she worked, the sound wrapping through the rooms like comfort itself. And each time, gratitude swelled in his chest. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the fields, Matthew turned to Loretta. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Loretta smiled gently. "You don't need to repay me, Mr. Grant. I only did what was right." Matthew shook his head. "Don't call me that. Not after everything. Please, just call me Matthew." Ruth chuckled softly from her chair. "I told you she was special, son." Loretta looked down, her cheeks warming, but she said nothing. Matthew's heart swelled with something he hadn't felt in a long time, trust. For the first time since his marriage, he felt like the people around him truly cared about him, not his bank account. And that realization changed him. What happened with Kayla had been shocking, devastating, but it also pulled the mask off the world around him. It showed him who was genuine, and who was only there for what they could take. And it reminded him of a truth his mother had always whispered: love isn't proven in words, it's proven in sacrifice.